Welcome back to the channel.
Yeah, welcome back to the channel. Today we are filming a podcast.
Yeah, so this is our Awkward Chats preview. So come get lost with us today in the chats.
It's June, which means
Father's Day.
And my relationship with my father is very interesting. My father is from Cuba, and he came over, I think, in the early 80s, late 70s, I think. He was a political prisoner in Cuba from the time he was a teenager until he was about, I think, like 22, 25, somewhere around there. And I think he met my mom in his 30s, and then they had me. And thus, he was already a father, though, before he made me. I almost said I made him a father. I did not. He had actually 2 twin daughters in Cuba, and they're still there. So, interesting enough. But yeah, so we celebrate, for the most part, we always celebrated Father's Day. I mean, I grew up in church, going to church every Sunday, and like when you go to church, they always celebrate Mother's Day, Father's Day, Easter, Thanksgiving. Like those are always things that you celebrate when you go to church. And so I think we were going to talk about kind of some of the more memorable Father Day events that happened in my house. And
Father's Day. You're like Father Day.
Yeah.
My Faja. I'm celebrating my Faja. I'm going to get my Faja a present for Faja Day.
Yeah, I think one year I bought him a camera. That was like one of the first years we were together, and I brought it over to your house, and I was like, let's take pictures on the camera. And it was this was before digital cameras were anything great.
It was that Nikon one or something, wasn't it?
No, it was that little
Fujifilm.
Black one. Yeah, it was like that little black one, and it could do like 30-second video clips.
Wasn't it the one that could like pop up? Didn't it have like a pop-up like flash too or something?
That was later.
Okay. I remember that one. I don't remember this one.
That one I jacked from my parents' house. This one I actually bought my father.
Faja.
All right, guys, so we're about to go out on another adventure, so make sure you guys hit that like button and subscribe, because when we hit 1,000 subscribers, we're going to jump off the Strat. So let's go. And I remember I brought it over to your house, and I think I was like, let's take pictures.
I know for me, I'm horrible at getting Father's Day gifts. Like, that's the one thing I'm not a good gift giver, I don't think, when it comes to other people. Like, it's very frustrating to find out, like, what they want. My dad is someone who's very reserved and doesn't tell you things about themselves unless you pull and pull and pull. It's like trying to pull like an ox up a hill. You know what I mean? That's what I would put the analogy as. You just have to keep pulling and pulling. He likes to read, but he doesn't tell you what he likes to read. He loves cars, but he doesn't really. It's funny. You'll get him something and he'll be like, "Oh, thanks," and you can tell he's not impressed by it. And it's like, but how am I supposed to get you something if I don't know what you like? Mm-hmm. He likes sports teams, but those come and go. He doesn't like the Braves right now because they traded Freddie Freeman, but that was a big thing for him.
Big thing for me too.
He likes the University of Miami because he really loved those football years.
You can really, that's usually my go-to for him, is I get him
right. But that's everybody's go-to. So he already has all the stuff. Like, you can't buy him a Miami Hurricanes book because he has basically everyone that's come out. You know, so it's like, what do you get him? So he's a difficult to shop for type of person because he doesn't really tell you what he wants. But I'm bad at getting gifts too, so it's part on me too because I'm not very good at getting gifts.
I'm really bad at getting gifts.
So we were going to tell you a story about Nacy's father, though, that involves both of us. So it does involve both of us there. And we're pretty sure it was a Father's Day. If not, it was like a July 4th. So it's still sort of in the summer months, which is, so it's June. So it's not that far from July right now.
Well, fun fact, too, about my parents is their wedding anniversary was in June as well.
Interesting.
Yeah, so we always celebrated Father's Day in relation to their wedding anniversary too, because I think they were only like a week off. It was somewhere between the first and second week of June was my parents' wedding anniversary.
Yeah, so they're divorced. That's why she's saying it was their wedding anniversary.
Yeah, they are very much divorced now.
But he only lives like a house down from her. So how really very much is that?
Yeah. And
Yeah.
again, my relationship with my father is in a weird
Fascia.
place right now. We don't really talk to each other, so type of good.
Yes, but what we wanted to talk about today was the story. Remember, your family came over for a barbecue?
So going back to that, we would have get-togethers with some of our extended family that lived in Naples, because my grandmother, before she passed.
So check out our previous podcast. We'll talk a little bit about where we grew up and sort of that kind of connection to community that we had there.
And my grandmother, before she passed, the last, I think, 5 or 6 years, she lived with my parents in their house. So then, like, family would come to my parents' house to see her. They'd be kidding themselves if they thought that they were coming to see them, because ain't nobody came to see the Leyvas. Ain't nobody got time for that, because it's always drama. There's always something that happens that kicks things off. And so for this particular incident, we had grilled out. I think they had like burgers and hot dogs and drinks and stuff. And we were all, it might have been Mother's Day, I don't know. But anyways, we were all kind of like sitting around after we had ate. And my parents had just moved into this house. They had just bought this house, I think, within the last year.
Yeah, and they're kind of located. It's not, well, I wouldn't say rural by any stretch of the imagination, but there's like a more packed part of where we used to live, and then there's sort of like this spread out area of where we used to live. They're still in the spread out area, so there's houses around them that could physically see them, but they weren't. There aren't that many that are that
like
close.
Neighbors,
Yeah, it's not like West Coast living where you're literally like neighbor, neighbor, neighbor. This was more like house with a ton of lots in between it, and then there was a neighbor. Mm-hmm. There was one right behind them, I think, at the time, or right like to the right behind them. But then the rest of them are pretty spread out across like a couple streets down.
So we're all just kind of like chatting in the living room, not really doing anything. And my one sister came in and she looked out to the deck, and she's like, "The grill is still smoking. Did you turn it off?" And my dad was like, "Yeah, I turned it off." She's like, "There's smoke. Like, there's a lot of smoke coming from the patio where the grill is." So we all kind of go back to our discussions, and like my dad went out to go take care of whatever the hell was out there. And we're all just talking. I think we were sitting on the couch, and he opens the sliding glass door. He runs through the house, goes to the front door, opens it, proceeds to take a step outside, and then stops for a second, then turns around and looks at everybody and goes, "Well, why are you all sitting down? The grill is on fire. We need to get out." And we're all just like, "What?" And then chaos ensued.
Yeah, so he had the grill outside, but they also put up like one of those tent things with the plastic walls on it. So if you've ever seen those at like Home Depot or whatever, it's like a tent. So it has the tent top, it's got like metal poles, but then it also has like a plastic sheath around the outside of it to kind of keep like bugs out and stuff. They had set out that outside.
Like a pavilion.
He had built the grill into a sort of structure which was made up of wood and some concrete blocks. So he had made this like structure to put the grill in. So it was kind of encased in there. As you can already see, the problems with building something with wood and dealing with fire. But he had that. And then there's some other stuff too. There's like some lawn furniture and stuff out there. A lot of like plasticky stuff, like a plastic table and stuff was out there. And then you had like a little porch area that he had it screened in at the time, didn't he? Or was it still open?
I think it was still open, but
So
it was just like a bunch of brick.
So it was still just a screened porch with like a screened porch there.
And then, so everybody, like chaos ensued. Everybody's trying to get everybody out. My poor grandma is not somebody who can like move very quickly. So
well, she was kind of at the end of the life stage too, so she was very slow moving. You had to help her. She had a walker. Mm-hmm. She was not swift on her feet at this time.
No, so got her outside, got everybody else outside. My mom's getting their pets together and stuff. Meanwhile, we don't know what the hell's going on in the backyard. All we know is that something's on fire. There's propane involved. So, like, we're all like, shit, this is going to explode. I think somebody called 911. And then we moved all the cars. Like, we had to move all the cars from in front of the house. And
so what happened was Your dad's running around like a chicken with his head outside. Your parents were just going to walk outside and stand outside in the front of the house. And I said, no, that's not a good idea because if it explodes, the house may catch on fire. So you're going to want to like at least take the cars down the street. So then they started loading people up in cars and left. And then I went around to the back of the house and got a hose and started trying to put the fire out because it was clearly going to burn. So I didn't want it to burn too hot and just blow up. But if we could cool the tanks down, at least it wouldn't blow up the tanks, was my thought. So I'm back there like figuring out how to get a hose because, of course, the hose wasn't hooked up correctly.
Probably not.
So I had to re-pull the hose through, and then I had to get it away from the fire big enough to hose it. It started catching up on those plastic. That's why I mentioned the plastic tent thing. It started catching on fire because of the heat. So I had to keep that cool so that didn't light up. And then you had the porch, which is like a plastic vinyl screen that just starts melting, and everything is melting. I'm like hosing it, trying to keep the heat down. And then you have her dad, after I'm back there for a while, everyone else has abandoned the house. Her dad comes around back of the corner, at least 20 feet away, yelling to me, hey, let's go. I'm like, no, if we don't stay, this thing's going to blow up. I have to make sure this thing doesn't blow up. And so I'm spraying it. Her dad just disappears, just absolutely vanishes.
He used you
He's
as
like,
a human shield.
and was gone. And so I'm basically hosing it down. I got the fire under control. I got it down to basically a puff before the police even got there. But it was funny. Eventually the police show up, and the police won't get close to it either. They're like, is it still on fire? I'm like, no, I don't think so. You can always go close. He's like, no, I'm good. How about we go around to the front of the house? I'm like, how about you go around to the front of the house, and I'll stay here till the firefighters get out. Oh, well, I can't stay back here. It might hurt me. No one's asking you to, buddy. No one's asking you to. Like, go away. But leave me alone.
It was an inch. Yeah, so like it was just chaos, and then the fire department got there,
And then her grandmother's making awkward comments about attractive firefighters.
Oh yeah, she probably did.
I know she did. I was there. That's what I'm saying.
It was probably one of the most eventful family get-togethers.
And then the firefighters are like, wow, that thing almost exploded. I'm like, yeah, I know. It would have been fun. In a new house, you would have lost the house.
And what makes it funnier is that was the second time in I think a couple of weeks that my dad had almost blown up their brand new house.
Well, he did it the first time. He caught the thing on fire before when I wasn't there, and he was talking to me about it. I'm like, well, one of the things you need to do is get all the plastic away from it, and you also need to not build whatever the fuck you're building with wood. Like, why would you build something with wood to encase a grill that is run by gas? Like,
Yeah, the problem.
there's an open flame.
The first one where they almost caught the whole house on fire was a grease fire.
Yeah.
He was like deep frying on a propane thing outside in the backyard, which don't get me wrong, that's what they do in Cuba.
And it's not common to catch your house on fire. That's not actually, if you're around Thanksgiving time, that's a definite legit tip. Be careful with that. Use less oil. It's always better to have less oil. You might burn the turkey, but at least you're not going to burn your house down.
So yeah, and that was like the week after they moved into that house.
Yep.
So like this was a common theme at my parents' house, and like I think after that incident, my mom said no more propane.
And the funniest thing too is that you described the event, but you really gloss over how awkward it was. He first ran out the garage. He didn't run out the front door at first. He ran out the garage and was gone for like 20 seconds or so, or maybe even a minute. He just disappeared. So he went outside to look. He was out there for a little bit. Then he doesn't come bolting through the house. He literally like walks extremely fast though, goes into the garage, and then he vanished for a while. So my guess is he left and then came back to tell us. Because then he came back, went back into the backyard, and then the scene that Nacy explains happens, where he runs past us to the front door, opens it, and is like, why are y'all sitting there? We should be going because it's on fire. And it was just like it's like they tell you when you're kids to train for fire things in case that happens in your house, but no one ever does it. No one ever really trains.
Yeah.
And like in this situation, it's clear maybe people should train for those type of things just in case they do happen in your house. Because he didn't know what to do.
And there were so many people in our house
and
that needed to get out.
And every single one of them had an opinion about what to do, but none of them wanted to do anything of value. And it was just like, just get in the cars, leave, wait down the street, call 911, and we'll see if we can stop the fire from taking your house over.
Yep. Yep. That was definitely one of the most traumatic family get-togethers I think I've attended in that house.
I know for me, at least when a fire starts, my idea is just to be like, let other people figure out how to get to safety. Let's try to mitigate the damage or mitigate the danger as much as we can. And so I just went into doing that while they're like running away like chickens. And it's like, but you can run down the street, but you could also just get in your car and drive down the street. Because at least if it blows up and you're in your car, you have a little bit of extra protection. If you're running down the street, you know, how far are you going to be from the house before the can explodes, right?
Yeah, I think my family is definitely well known in that neighborhood for doing stupid shit between like parties and the loudness of my father and just my family in general, losing dogs all the time, and like my family is not a chill.
But it was a funny party experience for sure.
Yeah,
but for sure.
So yeah, that was definitely one of the most memorable.
Were we living in the Cape? We were living in the Cape at that time. Yeah,
Yep.
okay.
Yeah, that's why we were over there, was because we were living in the Cape.
Yeah.
So, yeah, that was definitely interesting. And then, like, you know, fast forward to like hanging out with your parents on Father's Day, and it's so low key. It's like, let's have lunch. We'll just kind of sit around, and
Yeah.
it's very, very chill. And then you go to my house, and it's like chaos. There's lots of loudness. There's music. There's this, there's that. There's like so many elements to like my family's get-togethers. It's chaos.
Well, in defense, I think when I was a kid and both of my grandparents lived in the same town we did, we typically would go over to their place for Father's Day, so we'd stay there, and it would be a more loud production because on one side my aunt and uncles would come over, the ones that lived close by. So for my father's side, that would be a decent amount of people, and then it would be like either like a lunch or a dinner, and then we would do either lunch, the opposite, either the lunch or the dinner at the other family. So we would go from like a lunch at one to a dinner at the other one, and the lunch on my mom's side was typically a lot less because only my Uncle Matt and my Aunt Debbie lived there, so it would just be basically us. So and they don't have children, so it was just us at my other grandparents' house. So it was less of a thing. They used to be more party-esque, especially on my dad's side because there were so many people there. But now that it's just kind of my dad, there's not much that we do. We just kind of hang out.
Yeah.
And my dad's so difficult to figure out what he wants to do. Even when you invite him to a baseball game, it seems like you're inconveniencing him. But I know he likes it, so it's a very weird sort of situation you have when he comes to events. It's always like, roughing around. It's like, but don't you enjoy this? He's like, yeah, then why are you roughing around? Like, what are we doing here?
I can see that similarity with you sometimes, and because like sometimes like you're enjoying yourself and you're there, but then I feel like sometimes like minor things that happen, you're like, and then before we know it, you're like, no, I'm happy, I'm fine. I'm like, are you sure? Because like the behavior you exhibited 5 minutes ago when we were inconvenienced because somebody got in front of us, or like maybe there was a line. I'm always like, but then I've kind of just learned with time that like he just makes comments, and it doesn't mean that that's how his entire mood is.
Right.
It's just kind of like.
Well, I think now, for me at least, and this is not obviously holiday related, but like for me, I get hyper focused on getting the stuff I need to get done for our channel done, and then once that gets out of the way, it's kind of like then I can enjoy it. And that's a horrible approach, by the way, for everybody out there, but that's a horrible approach to take to things. But I feel like that's the approach I'm taking lately, which is not a good idea, but like hyper focused on getting my stuff done. And so if anybody gets in the way, it's kind of like frustrating, like, why are you in my way? Get out of my way, you know? Mm-hmm. That and people are jerks here.
People are just interesting. I think the more we travel and the more places we go, it's always the same people, different city.
Yeah, very true. Very true.
So it's always fascinating going to other parts of the country, and you realize like, oh, like there's some nuance and some differences, but for the most part, people are the same.
Yeah.
Same everywhere.
So I think next we're going to talk about Nacy's surgery, but for all of you on YouTube, make sure to like that video.
Hit that subscribe button.
And ring that notification bell so you get notified when we do 3 videos a week. And if you want to see the rest of the podcast,
jump onto Patreon.
And click that link that's below us in the little description, and it'll take you right to Patreon. And you can join our Patreon and see the rest of our awkward chats.
Yeah, we'd love to have you guys over there. And we've got a lot of other stuff that's on Patreon as well. From
behind-the-scenes videos to photos to...
And pretty soon we've got merch, and we've got like postcards and stuff. So we've got a lot of ideas of like how we want to include you guys in some of our adventures and our travels.
Yeah, so we're excited to see you guys over there. But until then,
we'll see you guys in the next one.
We'll see you in the next one. I'll see everybody in Patreon in a minute. Bye, everybody.
Bye.